In order to understand the selfish gene, you have to understand something about our universe, and that is entropy, that order moves to disorder. And so, what do I mean? If you have a house, eventually that house will fall apart. You'll get like a hole in the roof or something, and you'll have to tear it down. If you have a car, you will eventually have to get rid of it. Your body will eventually grow old, and it will also have to be disposed of. And so everything is moving from a state of order to disorder. And this has been happening since the start of the universe. When the universe began, all matter was condensed into one small place, and then it expanded. In fact, we shouldn't call this the Big Bang. We should probably call it the Big Expansion. The word Big Bang actually came from somebody who was making fun of the idea. And so most people think that we should call it the Big Expansion. We are still in that event. The very event that created the universe is still occurring. We are still expanding. And most scientists believe that that expansion will continue until we reach what's called heat death of the universe, where all things have sort of dissociated. And so you can kind of imagine that our universe is between two oceans. There is the ocean of order, the beginning of which had all particles together. And then there is the ocean of disorder. And right now, you can imagine that we are floating on an inner tube along a river that leads from one to the other. Here's you, somewhere in there. This river is entropy. The movement of systems like you, for example, from order to disorder. And so here you are the system, you are in this little river. And I like this idea of entropy being like a river, because rivers do interesting things. Like, for example, if we look at this river here or this river here, you can see that it branches off into a lot of directions. We call these delta waves. And this is an idea that I kind of came up with, but I think it would agree with most scientific explanations of what life is. You owe your life to entropy. The very death of the universe is the reason why you can exist at all, because energy is released through this process. So, for example, the sun. The sun was created very shortly after the Big Bang. When the universe expanded, hydrogen was the first atom. And that hydrogen sort of collected together into big balls of gas known as stars. Those stars then compressed all that together through fusion reactions, made all of the other atoms on the periodic table. Those atoms eventually became molecules, and eventually you. And so the sun, our sun, is still a big ball of hydrogen, and it is slowly turning it into helium. Eventually, our sun will die, billions of years from now, and it will enter the sea of disorder. And right now, we are in between. We are somewhere in the middle. And so that energy is slowly going out into the universe. And we can actually feel that. We feel it in the form of heat. Our planet is nice and warm because of the energy that is escaping the system that is the sun. And so some of that energy actually gets captured by things like plants. And then those plants survive and reproduce, and they evolve, and we have different species come out of that. It all started with one plant, and now we have all these plants. Eventually, they all enter the same sea of disorder. And then some of that energy is captured by things like deer and rabbits. And then some of those are eaten by carnivores like you and I, or we also eat plants. And so it creates this beautiful divergence along the way. You see, we are all going to that same sea of nothing, of disorder. But we get to be alive because we get to basically feed off of the energy released from that process. This is a kind of abstract idea, but it's not the first time somebody has come up with it. I'm not just making this up. This idea, you can see it in the writings of Schrödinger. To paraphrase him, he said that life is a momentary state of order made possible by energy released from disorder. He phrased it a little differently. I believe he said something about life stands in defiance of entropy, but then he went around and explained how entropy itself made life possible. And so why am I getting into this weird conversation? It's because entropy is inevitable. All systems of order are just riding along that river. Here you are somewhere in that river. And you will eventually be in the sea of disorder. And so there's this thing called mortality. It's very annoying. Mortality basically means that you are limited, that eventually disorder will claim you. Your body will accumulate mutations, and your cells will lose their memory and start causing cancer, and you will eventually enter a state of disorder. And your genes, which know this, or they don't know anything, but your genes have to exist despite this. And so randomly they were designed to defy this eventuality. And so the solution they have come up with to the mortality issue is replication.